Graham, I don't know what happened here, but when I was talking with the audience, all of them said you should grow a handlebar mustache. That was established while you were away.
Oh, yeah. I think we need to have a GoFundMe then. Because I got to tell you, you want to talk about a government secretly? I have a long, rich history of never having facial hair. I grew a beard once.
Really?
For commercial. And I thought, because I've been shaving since I was like 13. I'm like, oh, I'm going to grow this really thick beard. You know, I'm dark. It's going to be, I'll grow this in like a week. And after 2 weeks, I just had this scraggly, weird beard. And I was like, this is horrible. Like I should never.
Well, mine is mine's not one of those massive, like Irish fucking, you know, living in the woods beard. So I wouldn't call mine impressive. It just does the job.
An Irish living in the woods beard. I think it's all pronounced in one word. Irish living in the woods beard.
Yeah.
An Irish living in the woods beard, which I got to tell you was the name of my doctoral thesis. And I tried to defend it, and that's why I don't have a PhD, because it made no sense. An Irish living in the woods beard.
Yep. Well, do we know the problem? It seems to happen every week now. Why you can't hear me?
I think it's a different problem each week.
Oh, okay, good.
It's exciting.
Well, you know, as long as we can. I've always said my goal in life is to fail differently every time. Fuck up in a new and exciting way every week.
For all you young viewers out there, fail differently. Find a different way to fail. I'm sure you were wondering, Lee, as was our audience, what's in my smoothie?
Of course. Or better yet, who's in your smoothie?
Well, an Irish woodsman beard I ground up. It's got, I tried unsweetened cashew milk this time.
That sounds like the most boring thing I've ever heard. That sounds like a review of a John Tesh album. Just like listening to this sounds like it feels like drinking unsweetened cashew milk. Oh shit! I think I hurt Graham. Uh-oh, folks.
That's how you.
Oh God!
This is the John Tesh of smoothies.
Oh no! I really hurt Graham.
Well, Lee, John Tesh is an American treasure, and
this is the part where you tell me, well, I've worked with him a lot. He's actually my uncle, and I'm like, oh fuck, shit.
He gave me my start in show business, Lee, and he's like, Graham, this is how you become like unsweetened cashew milk. Holy shit!
Can you actually taste unsweetened cashew milk? I feel like that's
not
what,
really.
Yeah.
Yes, you can't. I mean, the only thing giving this thing flavor is the fruit I put in it. You know what I mean? But
I think the fruit's doing the heavy lifting, definitely,
without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's like John Tesh's backup singers or band or whatever. They're the actual musicians that are carrying this guy. They are the wind beneath his wings. You know what I mean?
So I think we should definitely spend our first 5 minutes on establishing whether you have succeeded in your quest against your car insurance company, or whether there's now 3 car insurance reps buried in your backyard, or what stage that is at. I know I know the fans want to know. They want to know what happened.
Government secrets, car insurance update. Yes. Breaking news. I've heard nothing from the insurance company. Nothing has happened. This guy called me Monday before the holiday a week ago and said, looks like your car's probably going to be totaled. The repairs are going to cost more than the total. But your car's still sort of drivable.
Who would have thought a car called a Leaf could be so easily totaled? I would have thought it would have been indestructible.
The 2017 Nissan Leaf, the John Tesh of automobiles.
the unsweetened cashew milk of cars. That's how they described it when they introed it at Truckamania or whatever. Monster Truckamania. And coming now, the cashew milk of the unsweetened cashew milk of cars.
Ladies and gentlemen, this Sunday, Big Daddy Don Carlos and his wheels of steel, Truckosaurus Rex, and the unsweetened cashew milk of automobiles. The 2017 Nissan Leaf. It is. I feel, God, this thing. So I've been driving this rental car now for over a week. And I feel so guilty to say this. And I'm half tempted to not say it, but it's just too funny. So my rental car is a Nissan Rogue. And I like it better than my Leaf. I hate to say that. I feel like a vegetarian that had a steak for the first time in 15 years and was like, yeah, this is great. like, shit, man, they're really cooking these up a storm now. This is great, man. Like,
I was vegetarian for years, and then I ate one live chicken, just bit its head off, and I haven't turned back since.
It was the capturing it and eating it while it squirmed, which was really the turn on for me. So, and look, this is my second electric car. I had a Kia Soul EV. It had a 3-year lease, and it was up this summer. And then I got this Nissan, and I got to tell you, my Kia Soul, I loved that car. That car was amazing, and the Leaf was all right. And we now know it's the unsweetened cashew milk of automobiles. I
love the difference in the names. It's like the ones that are the trucks that are going for the fucking hillbillies in North Dakota are named like Tundra and fucking Elk Cock, like, and meanwhile, Graham has owned a Leaf and a Soul. It's a Leaf and a Soul.
The Chevy Namaste.
And he also once had a Honda Gossamer Teardrops that he drove into the horizon.
The Toyota Chakra Crystal that runs on rainbow fumes and unicorn whispers. It's what powers it. Or you can have the Chevy Gunsteak, which is an amazing vehicle. So back to Insurance Gate car. So the guy said, and I was going to get another, I got to go back to the Kia Soul because the Kia Soul EV, the 2021s were supposed to come out this summer. My 2017 Kia Soul EV, all electric, had like about 100 miles to the charge. And the 2021s were going to have 240 miles to the charge, which was like, well, that's it. That solves all the problems of living in Southern California. Because with 200 some yards, I can go all over the place. And there's fast charge. There's a great infrastructure of charging in California, right? So when the pandemic hit, they stopped making, like, all the car companies were like, we're not making cars anymore, or we're going to slow down production. And so the Kia was like, I don't know if we're coming up with another year with this. I don't know what we're going to do with this.
Right.
And, I moved and I got the Leaf. So anyway, and the Leaf was fine. I like having an electric car. So anyway, the Leaf, a tire hit it and it crumbled. So
for most cars, what would have been a fender bender turned yours actually 2D. Your car is 2D now. It lost the third dimension in the wreck.
I should honestly put photos up because they're pretty. It's amazing.
I can, so that we don't, so that people don't tune in thinking I thought I was going to get government secrets, and there are no government secrets. I can give there's some good government secrets about car charging that we could throw in here. We could get into well, for one thing, we could get into who killed the electric car.
Right.
We could get into the fact that many cities in America had a actually great functioning electric trolley system before that was destroyed by big oil and big automobiles.
Los Angeles being one of them. Los Angeles had an amazing public transportation system full of trolleys. And one of the tire companies and the oil, I think Standard Oil, went around and bought them all up and scrapped them. So that's a little gov seek.
Bought the actual trolleys?
Yes. And scrapped them. And told Americans to buy cars.
You know, it's almost, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's almost like in a capitalist society, money is power. It's almost like that.
I don't know, Lee. I think it's hard to, I can't quite put my finger on it. I mean, I don't know if that's what capitalism is, and or the needs and the will of the people to form a really functional society are like number 25 on the list. Behind, I want to make as much money as possible so I can have my own boat or yacht or island or plane.
So you're saying functioning society is on the list. That's exciting. That's exciting.
Oh, yes. There you go. That'll nothing gets a centrist more excited than there's a chance.
But also, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. And it's funny because Richmond, Virginia is, especially when I was there. Now it's becoming a little artsy, a little more interesting. But when I was there, it was still good old South. A lot of hillbillies running around, and there was no sign of any electric infrastructure, no electric cars. No, the Hummer became quite popular when I was in high school, and I found out Richmond, Virginia, the fucking first city to have a functioning electric trolley. Like the first ever test and functioning electric trolley. And I know that big oil and big automobile crushed it and took there's no remnants of it. But when I read that, I was like, no fucking way. Back in, it was, 100 years ago or something, but it's incredible that these infrastructures, it was actually like, hey, let's progress society. And big oil and big automobile were like, whoa there. What's that going to do for my bank account?
It's so maddening to think what America and the world could look like if we stayed on the track of like, hey, let's progress society. Let's make things better. We were doing things the old way. We've learned a new system. What's better for all of us? Like, what's better for all? Oh, hey, slavery's awful. Let's end that. Let's build an infrastructure. Let's have clean energy. Let's have all this stuff. Like you hear, I mean, we could do another automobile gov secret is the diesel engine was created by Adolf Diesel in the 30s to run on vegetable oil.
Really?
Oh yeah. It was, and he designed it for farmers. He was German, obviously. And then I don't know, something happened and the name Adolf became not popular anymore.
I don't remember. I think it was. I think someone performed really poorly in Eurovision, and he was named Adolf. And ever since then,
yeah,
no
one can name. There was a guy that named Adolf that didn't do well, or I can't remember what it was.
Can't quite remember. I mean, I think it was the death knell for my neo-Nazi sketch group that it was called Adolf More Than You Can Chew.
Adolf More Than We Can Chew. Oh, God.
Call back.
Oh, I love a good GovSeek riff callback. Government secret riff callback.
The last thing, I don't know if we're getting ready to move on, but the last thing that the last kind of government secret I can throw in here is there was like 2 years ago or something, or 3 years ago. It was back when Elon Musk was not tweeting every insane fucking awful thought that came into his skull, and instead was viewed as like just a guy helping the planet. And a hurricane was approaching Florida. I think it was like 3 years ago. And a hurricane was approaching in Florida, and there was a scramble for everybody to get out of town, and gas stations had lines for hours and things like that. And Tesla elongated the battery life in all of the Teslas in Florida so that people could get out. And that was a lovely thing to do, but it made everyone realize, hold on, you're telling us the battery actually artificially empties? Like it says it's dead when it's not dead, and you can push a button at Tesla headquarters and elongate the life of our battery? That's fucking crazy. But of course it makes sense because they want them to buy the longer battery life, the more advanced cars, etc. And so it's like your iPhone, artificially dying.
What? Boy, I know. What a simpler time when we thought Elon Musk, and I was one of these people like, oh, the Tesla, and he's making solar panels, and oh, he's doing all this great stuff. And it's just like, oh no, he's just an evil, soulless bag of shit capitalist, like all the rest of those hoodie wearing maggots in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, he's found a way to basically make a lot of money from the fact that people now care about climate change.
Yeah. And still, again, like we could put 400 miles a range in all of our cars, but we won't, except when there's a crisis. And then that other fake, like, isn't he cool? No, he's not cool. Bill Gates isn't cool. Zuckerberg, they're all fucking assholes. Right. And they need to crumble like a leaf getting hit by a tire. Anyway, we'll wrap up this government segment. So they said they're probably going to give me the total tag on my car. And, which means, they're going to have to, because I put some money down on it and I got an extended warranty. I can get a refund on most of my extended warranty because they prorated apparently. And then what they're going to do, because he's like, some people, if your car's still drivable, my car's still kind of drivable. He's like, some people keep it and then we just deduct the cost. And I was like, and I've driven it twice. I'm like, this car is not safe at all. Like it is going to.
What does kind of still drivable mean?
You can turn it on. You can drive it.
Please, you're moving it like the Flintstones, the feet through the bottom.
Yeah. Yes. You just take out the floorboards and do that. But no, it drives, but it just doesn't sound great. And yeah, it makes a lot of weird, like I can drive it in traffic. It's still legal. The lights work. It turns on, but I'm like,
it's still legal. That should be your decider as to whether you're cool with this car. It's still legal in some states.
It's sort of on some roads, it's kind of legal. So I feel safe. So I'm like, I said to this guy last week, I go, dude, I just scrapped the thing. And I said, what's the process? He goes, if we get that, we got to hear back from the appraiser. When that happens, we'll literally just give you a check and we take the car, you sign the title over to us. But I'm like, all right, I had to finance some of it. So I'm just hoping they don't come back insurance company style and go, yeah, here's a check for $9, good luck. And it's like, oh,
right. You might want to ask them how much this check is for.
Yeah. They haven't come back with a price yet. So this was the Monday before Thanksgiving. It was like, we'll probably call you.
They're like, will you get a vintage pair of swimming trunks? You're like, thanks.
They give you a vintage pair of swimming trunks.
Like with the one piece with the stripes on it. And they're like, hang on to this.
This is great. It'll appreciate value. What if they were like dumb the other way and we're like, wow, we're only going to pay you in these things called Bitcoin. I don't know what they're worth. But there's 100 of them. Yeah, sorry, it didn't work out.
That'd be amazing. Just once you get the insurance company that's dumb in the wrong direction.
Yes.
They're like, so it's only 9 Bitcoin. I don't know what that's worth.
Yeah, it's probably worth like $6,000 or something. That's cool. I'll just take, no worries, man. You tried. Just be like, later, bitch. Just I'm going to buy 10 Nissan Leafs that can explode.
Listen, it's not much, but it's just these 3 original Fabergé eggs. And we don't know, but you could probably get something for them down at the flea market.
I don't know. Is this Action Comics #1? Is that worth anything? I don't know. Just take it.
It's got a super guy on the front. Kids like the super guys. So.
Bobby Ruth or something, baby Ruth or something. I don't know. It's a baseball with this guy's name on it. I don't know. Just have fun. So that's where we're at. I was like, they're not going to get this shit squared away before Thanksgiving. So I've just been driving around in my rental car.
Living the dream.
So that's that one. And that is, I think it was technically a Gov Seek because we put in there the ripping up of the trolley system and Adolf Diesel's car in there.
Listen, I'm counting it. I'm fucking counting it. I don't care what anybody says.
Government Secrets, episode 18, first segment. Folks, this is Government Secrets with Lee Camp and Graham Elwood. Please download it, give it positive reviews, like it on iTunes and Spotify, share it on your social media. If you're watching it on either one of our YouTube channels, hit the like button, subscribe to our channels if you're a fan of one of ours but new to the other guy. So do all those things with Government Secrets, ladies and gentlemen.
Because I don't mean to brag, but we are bigger than ever before. And you should tell your friends that you were one of the early adopters. All right, because that'll get you social credit.
Yeah, you'll be like, I listened back in the day. Before I've
been listening since episode 13 or 14. They didn't know which number it was. That's how far back I go.
Yeah, but they refused to keep track back when they did that. All right, Lee. So what's your first Gov Seek?
I was going to get into because a lot of people don't realize that. Well, so. I'll start by saying a lot of people that view this know that you and I have had an impressive amount of suppression and censorship on what we do. There is, I don't mean to reveal anything crazy here, but there's a reason I've never been on the Tonight Show.
What?
So performers have this, and I think we've talked about this before, this first part, that performers have a kind of a wall up for what they talk about, a glass ceiling. And if they go beyond it in terms of questioning the corporate state, talking about things that are not allowed on CNN, then you can still achieve some success. I'm not saying you and I aren't successful, but it's often the kind of quasi-nether reaches of the YouTubes. It's not on NBC at prime time, and that goes with a lot of performers from the past as well. Now, almost all of them, without exception, became famous before they started pushing the limits. And then when they started pushing the limits, it was too much for corporate media to allow, for the corporate state to allow, for all of these people, the CIA, the FBI. It was starting to get threatening to the kind of unfettered capitalist structure that runs our country. And, there are some very obvious examples that you can point to where it's like very clear. For example, the Smothers Brothers, hugely famous, had a hugely successful TV show. I believe it was 1 or 2 seasons. I think it was maybe the end of the second season. And this is a time when there's like 3 TV channels. So having a huge TV show is millions of people watching. It's not like now where you're like, I'm on channel 912 and we have a total of 7 viewers, which is 70% higher than most TV channels. This is half of America is watching the Smothers Brothers.
Yeah,
and they became more and more anti-Vietnam War. I can't remember which one, but one of them was even, maybe Tommy was very adamant. And as they started speaking out more and more against the Vietnam War, this hugely successful show was just pulled off the air. Because it didn't matter that they were getting endless views, that people loved it. It was questioning the U.S. state and what we're doing around the world, and that was too much. But kind of a more squishy example where you can't be like, wow, that's so clear what happened there. The 2 huge ones that, I think people need to know about is, Jim Morrison and Lenny Bruce. And both of them are more extreme because they end up in the death of the performer, as opposed to the Smothers Brothers just get canceled. But they really, I mean, yes, they both OD'd on drugs, but both of them were kind of driven to their deaths, or at least driven out of the main. For Jim Morrison, it was driven out of the mainstream, which, then he OD'd. But with Lenny Bruce, it was really driven to his death because he lost all ability to make an income. And, for anybody who doesn't know about, most people know Jim Morrison and the Doors pretty well. Not everyone knows the history of Lenny Bruce, but Lenny Bruce, hugely successful comedian, but got successful on kind of PC, we'll call it, although that term didn't exist then, kind of nice humor that was allowed on late night TV, and got famous from that and was touring around and became more and more edgy, started going after the religious institutions, which back then you couldn't question, started saying words, naughty words that are not allowed on the stage. And they started arresting him repeatedly for speech, for the things he was saying on the stage. And it basically, the whole system decided that he was too threatening. I mean, a comedian going on stage and questioning our systems, our state, our religious institutions was too threatening. It couldn't be allowed. And so they started arresting him regularly at his performances. And I don't want to keep blabbering. I can let you go jump in here.
Well, no, you bring up a lot of great points, which is first of all, one of the reasons why we've talked about this before, but comedians like you, me, Jimmy Dore, Ron Placone, whatever, why we're not on network TV, why we're not on the Tonight Show.
By the way, you listed those as if there's a whole long list I won't get into here. No, that's it. You covered it.
Those four people, these five of us, because obviously to me, like, the ruling class learned from the 60s and 70s. So just to give a little into this government secret, to give people a little history lesson. So Hollywood was run by the studio system through the mid to late 60s. And then the studio system started to collapse. And if you read, there's a great book to read, Easy Riders Raging Bulls, where the 70s was this amazing era in Hollywood where you had movies like Apocalypse Now, you had The Godfather, you had movies that really show, like Apocalypse Now really questioned. Yeah. You had The Deer Hunter that was like, war's awful. And then Hollywood got bought up by the big corporations in the 80s. So, and that's why there are almost no, and today, with all these streaming services and all these options, you cannot find anything that truly questions the CIA, the American military industrial complex. You've got shit like Jack Ryan. It's like, isn't the CIA cool? And I bring that up because they realize with shows like the Smothers Brothers, and the Smothers Brothers started calling out the Vietnam War. So that's when Laugh-In started. They put Laugh-In out there to be the giggly soda pop version of the Smothers Brothers. It's a sketch variety show with no teeth in it.
Right.
No social commentary, just dancing and bikinis and nonsense. And while the Smothers Brothers, they ended up throttling. And the same thing with Lenny Bruce. He was questioning things. And it wasn't that he was swearing, because there was people like Buddy Hackett who were the most foul-mouthed comics ever, but they were foul-mouthed on, in the Catskills and in the late night blue shows. Yeah. They didn't challenge any societal norms. They didn't challenge organized religion. Lenny Bruce I remember I watched a documentary on him. Plus I remember watching I was like a 12 years old when video stores started. I went and watched the Dustin Hoffman Lenny movie, which is really powerful.
Yeah.
And he talked about cops arresting him because he was calling out the Catholic Church, and the cops literally like had like the Ash Wednesday thing on their forehead. Like these Catholic cops were like, you don't get to question that. And that's why they just kept arresting him, because
he was also, I think, a lot of it, some of his stuff had to do with calling out systemic racism, although he didn't use the term systemic racism. But
well, yeah, his philosophy, and you can agree with this or disagree with this, was I'm going to say the N-word over and over so it has no more power anymore. And he would make jokes that made people uncomfortable. There's a one time, when he was like at his height in like the late 60s, he was performing in New York City, and everyone was like, you got to come see this guy. And so Wilt Chamberlain, who was at the height of his fame and celebrity and winning championships, came to see him. And I think Wilt Chamberlain was like smoking a cigarette, or maybe even, a joint or whatever. And Lenny's like, oh shit, can I get it? Can I get a hit of that? And in the show, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. Lenny's so edgy, performers never do this. And Lenny said, oh man, you N-word lipped it, which was like an old racist term. And he said it, and everyone kind of got uncomfortable and laughed. And then he talked about, in this very brilliant way, about why that word was so uncomfortable and what it meant, and why, and his philosophy, and you can say this is effective or not, was to blow that, to show how awful systemic racism was. And
yeah, and it probably was, this doesn't excuse it, but times have changed a little bit, and this probably was the same time that Dick Gregory, who obviously is black, so there's a huge difference there. But I think it was his first book, maybe was just titled "The N-Word," not the N-word, but the N-word, and it was meant to. I mean, the reason he titled it that was kind of to force white people to deal with it, and I'm sure Lenny Bruce was heavily influenced by that kind of thing going on.
Yeah, it was this time of challenging and questioning everything. I mean, Richard Pryor had several comedy albums that had that in the title. And so he was making people uncomfortable. White America was really uncomfortable during that time, as well. A lot of them should have been. And as well, white America is uncomfortable today. I mean, with the George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter, and white people really having to like look at question their white privilege, and like, man, and Lenny Bruce was doing that and got arrested for it. And you see then, as we look to what media is like today, I mean, I remember when Ron and I were out in DC and we were on Redacted Tonight, we talked about how we were all just, and you said to Ron and I, like before we started shooting, you were like, you guys are only like the third or fourth comics or fifth comics I've ever had on this show, because there's no comics today that are talking about real political stuff. We were like, oh yeah, every comic has their 3 Trump jokes,
right?
But they even comics that I like sort of respect go on stage and are like, talk about how great Obama was. And we're just like,
yeah. And I think a lot of that's kind of a combination of, or I think a lot of it is probably ignorance just of the reality. They've centered their life around getting their news from CNN or NPR, and they don't move past that. But there's definitely a percentage that are smart enough to know, I can really address these issues, or I can be far more successful. So,
well, you look at the Netflix specials today. Look at the comedy Netflix specials. It's all about some guy, oh, I'm a boozy partier, I'm a slutty girl that sleeps around. There's no one in there talking about anything real.
Except and that's interesting to have seen how Netflix has also been locked down, as has most of the rest of the internet. When Netflix was younger, one of their most viewed documentaries was they had the Zeitgeist films by Peter Joseph, and those were getting millions of views on there and elsewhere. And nowadays, you could never picture Netflix like paying to acquire the Zeitgeist films. I mean, that would be far too edgy for them. Obama is one of their content creators, or content, whatever he is, producers now.
Yeah, and then you're also seeing. So I the more I've been, doing my show, Political Vigilante, and this show, and paying more attention, I'm now really watching the messaging they're giving us. And you go on any of the streaming platforms, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO, Netflix, whatever, and it's like revenge, really ultra violent, isn't America great, and be a slacker. Like isn't being a slack. Those the comedies are all like, oh, these dipshit slackers, because they saw the power back in the 60s and 70s. They saw the power of the Smother Brothers and the power of Lenny Bruce to like get people united together, and they can't have that. They have to have us divided and distracted and afraid and fighting with each other. That's why, what is it? The Social Experiment. They talk about at the very end of it, like we're all put in these silos designed to get us into civil war. I mean, like these revenge stories and like so brutal and so violent. And there's no, and they celebrate, there's all this stuff with Obama now on everything. Wasn't he great? And now that Biden won, oh, yay, ding dong, the witch is dead. We have had no racism war prior to Trump, and now it'll all be over again. And it goes back to these, and now I mean, like the CIA has script approval on like big Marvel movies and stuff like that. And you see,
and I think we got into some before, but any movie where you see any kind of large military equipment, unless it looks full CGI and is some alien spacecraft, but if it's even up armored Humvees and those kind of things, like that means that the military and the CIA had script approval, because the only way a movie studio gets to use that shit is to go to the CIA and say, we want to make this. And they've gotten more sophisticated. It used to be, even up through probably a lot of the 90s, that you would see these kind of full propaganda movies where it's like, the military's so great and they're killing this evil terrorist bad guy. But now it's far more sophisticated. They realize that you see a movie that may have a lot of moral qualms in it, and like, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. But there's just kind of a hint of like, well, the CIA's mostly doing good. The CIA did some bad, but really it was to help America. Like, it's not as cut and dry. So a lot of people walk out of these movies not thinking, wow, I just saw some propaganda. They walk out thinking like, oh, that was a, nuanced take on the CIA. But they know what the fuck they're doing. They've realized that the propaganda full on just like CIA, wasn't going to last. And so they've moved on to a far more sophisticated Hollywood.
Well, the sophistication like you're talking about is it's always, do the ends justify the means? Yes, is always the answer to that question. That question, does the CIA's ends, I don't know, we're breaking a lot of laws, and is it moral? But the end is right before the credits roll, you know what? Yeah, it was worth it. It's fucking unbelievable.
And it's always a guy trying to come to terms with it, be like, man, I don't know what we did over there. And then his friend's like, listen, we couldn't have done anything else. Like, yeah.
The end, America. Fuck yeah. Like, it's just.
There's this great, actually, I'll loop this all together back to Biden. Although I do want to say something else about Jim Morrison in a minute. But back to Biden, the guy he just hired for, or whatever, picked for some position, a CIA, I'm sorry I don't have the name with me, but a former CIA guy. There's an interview with him that the clip is just a minute and a half long, but his interview with him talking about his time at the CIA, and he's talking about trying to convince a student who walked up to him at a job fair and said, "You're with the CIA, they do awful stuff," and he was like, "Yeah, but we do it to protect America," or something like that. And then the student goes, "Well, what's the number one thing you're looking for in a candidate to work for you?" And the guy goes, "Integrity." And the student goes, "Integrity? But you guys proudly say you lie, cheat, and steal." And this is Joe Biden's new pick for whatever position. He says to the student, "Yeah, we do, but never to each other and only to help America."
That's so sweet.
The number one thing the CIA looks for is integrity. Ah!
I love that. That's just like the drug dealer that's like, hey, I'm not going to sell in my own neighborhood.
Right.
You're so sweet.
It's like the murderer who's like, listen, we have a code of conduct amongst hitman, all right? Hitman, we don't get in each other's way, all right? We respect each other.
It's so that, like, I love the people that do awful shit, but then have this ridiculous realization that and they sell it to you, and some people are naive enough to go, oh, it's like, hey man, like Ted Bundy, he murdered those women. It was awful, but he didn't eat them like Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, he's not a monster. Like, yeah.
Listen, he had a code of conduct, all right?
Yeah. He had integrity. I mean, there's certain lines you don't cross when you're bashing women's heads in and killing them. You don't eat them. Like,
you know what I liked? He always dressed well. All right, it's about integrity. He dressed well, dignity. He had his shirts ironed.
There was some class to it. He had a clean-cut young guy, wasn't a filthy hippie. I mean, yeah, he was a mass murderer that was horrific, and he lied to everybody, but he wasn't horrible. Like,
he wasn't horrible like Charles Manson. You're like, he killed like 30 more people than Charles Manson. It's like, yeah, but Charles Manson's shirts weren't ironed.
Yes. It's
okay.
Like, oh, so if Ted Bundy had a swastika carved into the middle of his head, then you would be scared of him. But right now, because he's good looking, it's all right. Oh, and that mentality that I think, going back full circle to all this, is by design. The CIA, as you've pointed out, has gotten way more sophisticated versus just blatant propaganda. People might be too wise to blatant propaganda. So they've realized, and I'm sure they've studied this, and tortured people to get this information, whatever evil shit they've done, to go, wow, this is how we water it down. And part of that is lesser of two evils, getting people, how much can I keep pushing these people? How much crap will they take if I just hide it just enough? It's like the people dancing in the streets for Joe Biden. And for the next 4 years, all we're going to hear is, well, at least he's better than Trump. I had somebody say that, a neoliberal comedian said that to me. Well, I mean, Obama was at least better than Bush. And I was like, not if you lived in Yemen, Syria, or Libya. He wasn't. They're like, so the CIA is like, oh, see, look, we can sell people on this lesser of two evilism, which means we're just keep moving the line on how much evil we can get away with.
Right. Right.
Oh, I can push these people further and further. And then
right now, Nixon would be viewed as a left-wing Democrat.
Oh, I know. Absolutely. Oh, hell, those pie in the sky Nixon things. Oh boy. Like, anyway, Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison. So some people might not know they know about Jim Morrison. They know the Doors. They know they were edgy, even in their time, but they might not know that, like, towards the end there, I think most of it occurred in his final year. And final year, the dude was like 27, 26 probably. But they went to perform, and they were becoming dangerous in a variety of ways. I mean, he, through his behavior and somewhat through his songs, he was promoting drug culture. He was promoting it was anti-war stuff. He was promoting kind of free love, the stuff that went against these church traditions of you marry someone and then the two of you only fuck each other forever. And this type of thing. And he was becoming very powerful. It's not that there weren't other bands saying this stuff, other musicians, other artists, but it has to do with the level you get at. Another one would be John Lennon. But it has to do with the level you get at combined with what you're saying. So the Doors had gotten to be to the level of like the American Beatles, and they're playing these massive concerts, and they have songs that are, The Unknown Soldier and songs that are anti-Vietnam, and the things he's saying between the songs are controversial for the corporate state. And so they arrested them multiple times, at least twice, following shows. But the one that they go forward and continue to prosecute him for is a show, I believe, in Florida, where they claim he unzipped his pants and took his cock out.
Right.
And there's actually no, this concert was incredibly photographed. There's photographs of every second of it, and there's no photograph of him with his dick out. There's a photo of him pretending as if he's taking out his dick. And anyway, they pushed this trial through in Florida. I believe it was in Florida. And he's facing, years in prison, or, maybe even just a year. But it's very, anybody facing that kind of shit. And I'm not going to act like Jim Morrison had his life together. I mean, this guy was completely fucked up, drank, chugged vodka as he rolled over in the morning. So it's not like he had his shit together, but he wasn't doing anything that deserved prison time. And the stress of all of this, he goes away to France to get away from it. He balloons up and becomes much larger than ever before. And, he's drinking from morning to night, and he's doing drugs, but it seems quite, doing hard drugs. And it seems quite kind of, it's not a far cry from what happened to Lenny Bruce, which is they put immense stress on these people who already have immense stress because they're massive celebrities. And they put the stress of the state going against them. And people who are already using a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol use more to deal with the stress. And at least in the case of Lenny Bruce and Jim Morrison, ultimately die from it. There's a lot of similarities there as to how they became threatening and what they were talking about.
Well, yeah. And I think the other thing they learned too was like, boy, if we assassinate these people, they really become more martyrs, and all these questions are asked. Whether if we badger these people and push them into a corner, eventually they'll OD. They'll drink themselves to death, or OD like Lenny Bruce did with heroin. And, Jim Morrison, I think, just drank himself to death. And they're like, oh, so then we can say, oh boy, the addict. Yeah, couldn't deal with it. And then we're not saying like, oh no, the state killed him, because like they learned so much from the Kennedy assassination of like, boy, too many people are asking too many questions. No way. We have to just crush them, crush their careers, push them aside, force them to self-destruct. That's the best way to do it, man.
And it's a double-edged sword or whatever. And, it serves two purposes, because not only are you probably pushing them closer to death if they're already addicts, but you're maligning their name as much as possible. You're trying to make sure that a Jim Morrison doesn't become a hero to the whole nation. He might be a hero to a subsect, but, they were so massive that he was becoming a hero to young people across the country. And if you can say, oh no, he's taking his dick out on stage, he's doing all these awful things, then you can, at least tamp that down, if not ultimately cause his death. But
yeah, and that's what they did. And that's part of that whole, that's why media today, even with all these options, is just pushing the capitalists and the war machine and the American exceptionalism. They push that. And that's why your show, my show get throttled. I mean, like I've lost 1,000 subscribers in the last month. I go live 4 to 5 days a week. I drop between 15 to 20 clips a week, usually 3 clips a day. And you're really going to tell me that my subscriber count on YouTube has gone down?
Yeah.
Like, it's not possible putting out that much content. It's just impossible. And yet they keep doing it, and they're trying.
Yeah, I get the same. And by the way, these tech platforms definitely speak to each other and speak about practices that are working for them. And I've had exactly the same thing. I mean, my YouTube is basically stagnant, but so I don't think they're letting it grow. But the most obvious one is my Facebook, which when Trump got elected had 335,000 followers, and I was gaining between 4,000 and 6,000 a week. And it just stopped. And it's only gone down ever since. And so it just slowly trickles down, and now they have it down even below 330,000. But you're telling me that, I'll have posts that I'll put up a meme or something that does well and gets a few thousand shares, and you're telling me I somehow lose subscribers while I have a very popular post out there. And it was kind of the funniest one was I had my first thing go viral. They must have changed the algorithm or took the throttle off or something. I had my first thing go viral in 4 years. I put up a meme of Jeff Bezos about how much money he makes, and it gets 80,000 shares, seen by millions. And so I guess the number of people following my page must have beat whatever it is they have that keeps it down. Because all of a sudden I jumped back. I gained enough followers that I basically jumped back to where I was 4 years ago. And yet then they sped up the decrease so that now what it took me 4 years to lose as they were slowly suppressing things, I've now lost in like a matter of weeks.
It's unreal, man. Like literally a month ago, I was at 73,700, like on my way to 75,000. And now I'm at 72,800.
Yeah,
I mean,
and back when these things were not tamped down, I would never you just don't ever decrease unless you were to do a video completely antithetical to everything you stand for. You might have slower growth, but these things back when they were allowed to grow were always growing. I mean, It's just natural.
Yeah, especially if you were posting content consistently, it would just keep growing. That's and you can't tell me, oh, our analytics, we're having no, you guys are doing this intentionally. I don't buy, I talked to this Google rep a couple months ago, and I don't think he's nefarious. I think he's a decent guy and he's trying to do his best job. And he's like, oh, we get, something like 1 million hours of content uploaded every minute or something, whatever. I mean, I get it. But so we have to use robots now more, or computers because of the pandemic and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, dude, I'm sure he believes what he's saying because that's what he's told. But somewhere high up, they're flipping a switch.
Well,
small. I mean,
so I actually did speak to, I can't say who because he doesn't want it to get out there that he has contacts and knows this, but he has friends at least one or two friends that are really kind of close to top echelon of Facebook. And they told him, they were like, dude, it is the Wild West. They're like, we can do whatever the fuck we want. And no one asks any questions. If we want to shadow ban someone so that they never gain followers again, he's like, we do shit like that all the time. It's just there is no higher governing body at Facebook that's like, wait a second, don't mess with that guy's page. He's worked very hard on it. Could you imagine Zuckerberg in a meeting being like, some of these people worked hard on these pages. Don't hurt them.
They worked hard and they actually generate revenue for this company. So we need to protect their audience and respect and protect their First Amendment rights. No. Well, I don't trust Google as far as I can throw them because they've been working with the CIA since 2011.
Something I covered on a recent show. I don't know if you saw this news story. It snuck through the cracks. You know how the CIA has a deal with Amazon for $600 billion?
Uh-huh.
So they've recently announced their latest cloud computing software deals, multiple billions. They don't know the number, but probably $20 billion. And they spread the contracts amongst Amazon, Google, IBM, Oracle, and I think one other. But so basically, we now know that the entirety of the big tech, world is in debt to the CIA to the tune of billions of dollars.
Shocking. I'm shocking that's the world we live in, Lee. I think everybody's pretty honest and fair. All right, so we want to move on to one or two more.
Yeah, let's do one more. I know we started late, so
we did start a little late, but let's all right, government secret segment number 3. Beep 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 beep. Bum, 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 brrr. I don't know what the last one was. Well, there's two choices here. I mean, we were talking about Biden's cabinet, but let's real quick, that guy Blinken, his stepfather has ties to Ghislaine Maxwell. Anyway, so it's
I didn't know that. Yeah, no. Biden's cabinet so far is garbage. I mean, it's Neera Tanden, it's Flournoy, who's I mean, these are all people who have been full on part of the war complex, promoting and endorsing all wars done by Democratic presidents since going back to Bill Clinton. There's not a one of them has been like the Iraq war was wrong or the Afghanistan, bring the troops home.
None of them. Like oil lobby people, just unbelievable. Heidi Heitkamp. I mean, horrible. Like, and so this guy Blinken, his stepfather was a Holocaust survivor, and there's this very amazing story. He got rescued by African-American U.S. soldiers. And it's like, oh, wow. I mean, like, that's an amazing story. And isn't that how one of the things that's great about America? A guy who's descendant of slavery was now freeing people from Hitler's tyranny and the Holocaust. Okay, great. But he was friends with Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who was also in Mossad. Come on.
And Robert Maxwell was kind of viewed as like royalty in Israel, but he was also very high up in the social echelon in Britain as well, right?
Yes. So the British royal family, of course, that we know has ties with Prince Andrew to Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein. Also, the British royal family. There's a whole nother story. Jimmy Savile was a TV personality that was uncovered, was a pedophile, and he was helping.
Yeah, longtime pedophile. But people need to realize that if they haven't been to Britain, Jimmy Savile is not like a small name. This is a guy who for 30 years basically owned British television. I mean, he was one of the main. He's like Larry King or something. One of the main faces of British television.
Yeah, he was a huge, like everybody knew who he was, like Johnny Carson or something at Carson's, in the 70s and 80s, like Carson's like fame, like he was the guy. Back again, like you were talking about earlier, when there was only 2 or 3 channels. And so if you had a hit show on one of those channels, you had, 30 to 40% of the whole country watching you.
Yeah.
So there's all these ties like that. And then, so that's just, I just wanted to throw that just a quick.
So good people. You're saying good people. Yeah.
Solid people. And
I said when Trump got into office and he was picking his cabinet, I used to talk about how I don't know like where he's finding these fucking creatures to be in his cabinet. I think he flips over rotting logs, and that's mainly where he finds most of his cabinet. Well, Biden is now flipping over the maggots and the bugs underneath that, and that's where he's finding his cabinet members.
Yeah, so you're the larva underneath the maggot.
You know when a tick starts sucking on the blood of like a roach, that's you.
You're the diseased cockroach tick blood.
Which, as I know you can tell everyone, one of my favorite metal bands.
I'm not a metal guy, but that one album they did, I love it. So
I mean, it put John Tesh to shame. It really did.
God, wouldn't it be great if his cabinet was actually unsweetened cashew milk? Like, just like, all right, they're not evil. They're just, municipal workers are just like, all right, fine,
Wouldn't it be great if the worst complaint you could have for Joe Biden's cabinet was like, this guy's kind of not done anything in his life. Like, he was just the guy who like stamps the papers at the like fucking garbage depot. And you're like, he's never done anything important. And everybody would be like, that's great. That's so much better than what he could be.
Oh, this person just ran the libraries. Perfect. That's all. I don't need him to do more than that. Just hold on. So yeah, that's who Blinken is. Real quick, that's his stepfather, has ties to Robert Maxwell. His stepfather was basically one of the last people to talk to Robert Maxwell before he mysteriously slipped and fell off of his boat in 1991. When
everybody falls off the boats. Okay, just like rich people, their planes often spontaneously explode in the sky. Just ask John F. Kennedy Jr.
Yes, it's totally plausible. People get despondent and hang themselves with paper T-shirts. It's totally, it's real. It's something we should all believe. So that's just another glimpse. And this guy Blinken is being tapped for the State Department. Great. So ExxonMobil was running the State Department under Trump, and now a global pedophile ring will be running it under Biden. So it's exciting times.
And the guy that Biden has selected to run his U.S. Agency of Global Media transition. So this is basically the guy that is in charge of all media for the Biden transition. Is named Richard Stingel. And there's a lovely clip of him online saying, when I was at the State Department, he's in a panel in front of an audience. He says, when I was at the State Department, they called me the chief propagandist. And, we haven't talked right now much about propaganda, but I'm not opposed to propaganda. I think it's a good thing. I think that our government should use more propaganda on our people. I think it's a very good thing to have that. And that's the guy. Literally, you can watch video of him saying the government should lie to you to fill your heads with bullshit so that they can continue their raping and pillaging.
That's my boy, Dickie Stingel. Come on
now. Dude, Dickie Stingel, I thought was only what happened to me when I walked through the woods that time. But, it was, I went off the path and it was a bad idea. I should have stuck with the path because
if you don't want to get a Dickie Stingel, don't stay on the path. Stay on the path of righteousness. So, I think it's obvious. Our audience knows you and I are both very much pro government propaganda. That's the whole purpose of this show.
Yeah.
We really want people to know it's okay. A little propaganda is not bad.
Well, at the end of every Government Secrets episode, we say, don't tell anyone else about the stuff we talked about.
Keep this under your hat.
Keep it under wraps.
Keep this episode, just keep it on the DL. If you know what I'm talking about, give it a little Dickie Stingel. You know what I'm saying? So that's a little side, just a little, well, I'm sure every week we'll have a little section on how horrible Biden's cabinet is going to be.
Right.
But I wanted to talk about the Federal Reserve because the United States has...
Hold on, there's no secrets there, are there?
No. This is just like, look at the work they're doing. It's really good work. It's like, cool. It's just a history lesson. Like,
good to hear.
They were started the same time the Girl Scouts were. It's good stuff. Just real quick, the Federal Reserve...
actually, most of the Fed's money comes from those coconut cookies. They what do they call it? The Samoan cookies?
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
If somehow the CIA or the Federal Reserve or the military could figure out how to get a taste of Girl Scout cookie money, they would. They're like, they would. Which is why, like, literally Raytheon is working with the Girl Scouts. Whole nother side thing. But so the Federal Reserve, just so people know, we have printed more money since the pandemic than the United States has printed in its entirety.
Really?
Yes. Which doesn't mean the dollar is going to be collapsing at all. Don't worry about it. It's totally good. That's good for the economy. Just print.
And let me just add in here. When you say print, you really mean created out of fucking thin air. Yes. Most money is 90-some%. I think it's closer to 98% or something. Is never printed. It's an idea in a computer somewhere. Ones and zeros somewhere say that someone has this imaginary wealth that does not exist and never existed and is not even, because I think a lot of people think that printed money is what really matters, but we don't even print most of it. So really it is truly nothingness. It is beyond just the meaningless pieces of paper. It's just an idea. So yeah.
It's like when people are like, oh, Bitcoin, it's digital money. What the hell is that? I'm like, that's what we all operate on right now. Do you have the dollars in your bank account? No, you get direct deposit from your job. You use your card to pay it. You pay everything digitally, or maybe you write a check, which again is just digitally moving money from here or there. And since we came off the gold standard in 1971, we've been operating on fiat currency. So even fiat currency is only a 49-year-old experiment. So the fact that people are like, Bitcoin's a lot of hooey, like, well, so's fiat currency. But let's get to the history.
Very true. And I just want to say gold currency, completely different because it's shiny.
It's shiny and pretty. But back then, like before 1971, a United States dollar would say a gold treasury note. So like whatever the amount was, let's say we had $1 trillion in gold at Fort Knox. That's how many bills we had in circulation. So it was backed up by the value of gold. So we don't have that anymore. So this meant back then there was a limit to the amount you could create. Because there's a limit to the amount of gold out there. Now, granted, gold is meaningless too. It's just a shiny rock, but at least it meant that there's only a certain amount. Yes. Which is, again, this isn't a segment about Bitcoin, but why people are calling Bitcoin the new gold, digital gold. There's only 21 billion Bitcoins in circulation right now. And they mint new ones every day, but every 7 years they have it. They cut it back. So they're keeping it like gold. There's only a certain amount of gold on the planet. You can't make gold in a lab or whatever. So, but I bring this up because the Federal Reserve in 1907, there was the San Francisco earthquake, 06, 07, somewhere in there. And when that happened, the economies collapsed and there was a run on the bank. So we've heard that term before. And that's when the economy goes bad and people would go to the bank. And this happened in Greece and recently in the last 10, 20 years. It might happen here very shortly, where people go to the banks and the banks, of course, loan out more money than they've got in cash reserves, right? Let's say a bank. And so now they're doing it in crazy amounts. That's what created one of the reasons they created the last housing crash in 2008. A bank would have, let's say, $100 million in physical cash reserves, and they would loan out, $1 billion. Right. So yeah, the term that, and it's one of the most harmful things, is fractional reserve banking, meaning the bank has 1/10 usually. That's, I think, the norm, 1/10 of what they're actually giving out in actual reserve. So if everyone goes there demanding their money, not only do they not have enough, they don't have anywhere near enough. They have 1/10 of what is out there actually on reserve. Yes. So then when people get panicked because of some calamity or whatever, then they go to the bank saying, I want my cash out. And that's what's called a run on the bank. So this happened after the earthquake. And this, I was watching some history about the Federal Reserve. This had kept happening in the 1800s. Several times in the 1800s, there was run on banks. And JP Morgan Chase, the actual man, was like, well, this isn't good. And he was basically running the world from his study in Manhattan. But he was a good guy. He really just wanted to help people, I think. All those guys are good. Rockefeller, solid guys, good. Well, and if you look up at their Wikipedia, I guarantee you the first word next to their name is philanthropist. Yes. That they paid to have in front of their name when it should say just murderer. Right. Like. So he was like, well, people keep running on the banks. This isn't good. And slowly he kept having this thing basically. So then in 1913, the Federal Reserve was created because they had a secret meeting. And most people, I thought this for a long time. Oh, the Federal Reserve is like, it's the bank of the government. It's Congress backs it. No, it's just a bunch of individual bankers were told, we need to be able to loan banks money to backstop them basically when there's these runs. Right. So we're getting these other bankers involved, and then we'll just do this. And then now we can do this with the federal government. And so the Federal Reserve is just basically a bunch of bankers. It's a banking cartel. Yep. It's it's a central bank. And nobody wanted a central bank back then. That's why they called it, we'll call it the Federal Reserve. So it was basically just a marketing ploy because people back then in the late 1800s, early 1900s didn't want a centralized bank.
Right.
That's what they created so that they could then do what they want with their money. And back in the government, Woodrow Wilson signed it into law in 1913.
And the banks that make up the Federal Reserve are private banks. Now, I don't know the numbers. I used to know them, but I haven't looked them up recently. But there's a certain billions of dollars that the Federal Reserve basically makes from, interest or whatever else. And most of that is given back to the U.S. government. But a percentage is kept by these banks. So it's whatever it is, 5 or 10% or whatever. So these private banks make like $5 to $10 billion. And I might have those numbers wrong, but I know it's somewhere in that realm. Maybe it's up to 20, but they make billions of dollars simply by creating out of thin air the U.S. government's money, America's money. And so the idea that you've got these people making billions of dollars just on the creation of our money is like fucking ridiculous.
It's so preposterous. So when you look at something like the CARES Act that had buried in it $4.25 trillion to Wall Street, what you're saying, to clarify for our audience, is then the Federal Reserve created this money and then kept a little taste. They get a little big.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I gotta get a little taste for myself. Yeah, of course.
Well, something just for the effort. You know what I mean? I'm not greedy. Just a little something. You know what I mean?
I just gotta make sure it's good stuff.
Yeah, I can create money for you out of thin air, but I gotta create a little something. I mean, just for my time, for my trouble.
for my trouble. And something else that is incredibly important when you talk about the Federal Reserve or the creation of money is that for every dollar that is created, that you owe a certain amount of interest before it's paid back. Money is created when it's loaned out. So in the moment it's loaned out, it comes into existence. And that's then owed back plus 5%, let's say 5% interest. So that means that for every dollar that's created, instantly $1.05 is owed. Meaning there is never the amount in circulation that is actually owed back. If all the money were paid back immediately, there wouldn't be enough money. And that's why you see debt spiraling out of control in all of these capitalist countries, because it is impossible to actually pay back what is loaned out.
Man, is this a great system? Like, it really feels like it's sustainable forever, and it doesn't. Because when you really break it down and learn about it, it's not like you're sitting here going, oh, we're weeks, months away, maybe even weeks away from just a complete global collapse, worse than anything we've ever seen, ever.
Yeah, and even if you just look at the regular boom bust cycle, not even some collapse the likes of which we've never lived through. Even if you just look at the normal boom bust cycle of capitalism, the average is 4 to 7 years of each recession, each bust. And for a lot of people in America or in whatever country that might not have that much import, there's a lot of rich people that don't suffer really at all. There's a lot of middle class that do okay. But for every bust, there are millions that have their lives destroyed. I mean, with the mortgage crisis, you have millions of people kicked out of their homes. And of course, when someone's kicked out of their home, you often have a spiral of suicides, of divorces, of obviously then that fucks up the children. And it's just the ramifications of this system are kind of just fucking never even... I mean, they're hardly talked about. The fact that every few years, this system just destroys millions of people and the rich get richer. And that is how the system is meant to work. That's when it's working right.
Yeah. That's like, oh, everything's working great. Oh, great. Domestic violence is up, suicides up, petty crimes up. Oh, this is fantastic. This really works. Just people are decimated. Then you've got intergenerational abuse, like because somebody grew, I mean, like I always tell people who are like, oh, capitalism, the free market can fix, but I go, you name a societal ill, name one, and I'll tie it to capitalism. Name one. Pick one. Drug addiction. Oh, wow. Probably because they were abused as a kid. Why were they abused as a kid? Maybe their dad or mom were having money trouble. I bet you somewhere in there's a lot of reasons for child abuse. There's a lot of reasons for it. But I bet you somewhere in there, somebody lost a job, somebody foreclosed on a thing, something happened in there that really put a catalyst on that. And they were like, well, why were your parents abusive? Well, they were children of the Depression. So I can trace it back. I can trace it back in my own family or anybody's family. Like I can trace it back to that. And we're on, I mean, I got divorced in 2011 and there was a lot of reasons for that. And some of it was stuff I had to work on myself. My ex-wife, we're still friends and that's great. But you can't overlook the fact that I went through bankruptcy and foreclosure. That was a huge, constant money stress, like constant, man. Yeah. Constant. And it was like, and it was thanks to Bush and mainly Obama letting the banks steal my fucking house. I made some mistakes along the way. There's no two ways about it, but I wasn't bailed out. The banks make mistakes. They're fine.
So yeah, I mean, I people obviously know we're friends, but I don't know all that about your everything about your history. But when you say you made some mistakes, was this kind of the thing where you were talked into signing something that was kind of unsustainable?
I was definitely offered like, oh, this will be easy. I was like, are you sure? Yeah, no problem. And it's like, those were some of the mistakes, and those, I mean, I put. But some not. Some it's like,
well, no, yeah, yeah. I mean, look, in any decision we make in life, people are going to say, "Well, some of it's on you," and it's like, okay, yeah, some of it's on me, but that process was designed that way. Yeah. It wasn't like, oh, it wasn't like they thought people understood how these subprime mortgages or variable rate mortgages or all this crazy shit. Oh, people understand how it works. And then they were like, oh my goodness, they don't get it. The fucking system was designed to push things on people that they couldn't quite grasp because we're not fucking mathematicians. We're not economists. We don't know legalese. And
we're not taught it. We're deliberately not taught any of these things in public schools too. That's part of it too, to keep us ignorant. So we'll just sign whatever and go into debt and get a credit card or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, this worked the way it was supposed to work. It was supposed to trick people into things that they likely couldn't afford. And, some would afford it and the bank be like, all right, great, you can afford it. But, I mean, it's a fucking horror show system. And yeah, a very slight bit of that has changed, but most of it's still going.
No, it's all, I mean, watch the movie, The Big Short. I just watched it again. Like I tell people, watch the movie, The Big Short, because it's all going to happen again. They say it at the end of that movie. Nothing got changed. Yeah. I mean, and they started back in 2015, these basically same bullshit loans again. These QDCs or whatever they were called, you know what I mean? Like they're bundling these bad loans together again and putting a nice wrap around them and saying, oh, they're great. It's all happening again. I mean, you were talking, all of us indie media people were all talking before the recession about the housing bubble, the commercial real estate bubble, the student loan bubble, the car loan bubble. There was in February, I did a story that there was 2 million car loans that were 90 days late or more in February. You think that number's gone down now? So like, it's like, and now getting back to this topic of the Federal Reserve, it's part of the whole system that was designed to where Wall Street and the federal government can just give themselves, they got great socialism, those folks. They get amazing socialism. Everything's paid for. Everything's taken care of. We saw it in the CARES Act. We'll see it again. I mean, Biden's going to come to the rescue and sign some stimulus. Some new stimulus needs to be signed. Yes, it does for the American people, but guaranteed buried in there will be more kickbacks to these Wall Street assholes. And also, I'll just throw this out. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, every president that said they wanted to end the Federal Reserve got assassinated.
That I don't know.
I'm just going to say yes.
I know that JFK said he was going to end the CIA, and that went well.
That didn't help. Yeah, he said it's going to end the CIA. A lot of people have like, yeah, we need to get rid of the Federal Reserve, and it's just like a lot of. That's a whole nother government secret.
Oh,
anyway,
do you have that list on hand? How many of them said they were going to end the Fed?
That's a great question. I don't have that on hand.
Wouldn't it be great if the answer was like, turns out none of them.
None of them.
None of them said they were going to end the Fed.
Nobody said they were going to end it. But yeah, I think it's kind of might be tied to like all the leaders of the world that said we're not using the petrodollar anymore, and then we invaded them or they got murdered.
Right. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. The central bankers rule all at the end of the day.
Yeah. And that's one of the things they need, going back to what you're talking about with the debt. That's why they love war so much, is war gives everybody, every country has to print money and go into debt to keep a war going. I mean, they have to do that. That's why so the Federal Reserve also lies that that deflation is bad. No, it's not. Deflation is actually the cost of things cost less. So like in 1865, after the end of the Civil War, to the 1900, by the time you got to 1900, I believe, or maybe it was 1880 or 1890, somewhere in there, you could buy, the cost of goods came down after the Civil War because there was a lot of inflation. You have to go into, both sides had to go into debt, right, for the Civil War. So that's the thing they always say, oh, deflation's bad because, oh, that'll hurt wages. And I watched this video, this guy so like after the Civil War, all these wages went up and the cost of goods came down. This is before the creation of the Federal Reserve. So like, that's another thing the Federal Reserve lies to us about, is like, well, inflation, we need it. No, it's only good for, we don't need this. We don't have, things don't have to cost more. Like,
right. And speaking of only good for them, a lot of people, including Trump, are very excited that the Dow hit 30,000 or whatever. And meanwhile, that means nothing for your average American. First of all, 80% of all stocks are owned by 10% of people. So they're not getting money from these stocks going up, most Americans. But then on top of that, corporations, generally their stock does better when workers are fully exploited, meaning they don't have any power. They can't stand up and fight back. The corporation does better. So you see a high stock when the average American working person is crumpling under the stress of it all. That's when a stock does well, because the corporations have full power to do whatever the fuck they want. My analogy that I've been using for years, but I wanted to catch on, is that being excited about how well the stock market is doing is like if you saw like a dying man in his last hours and you judged the health of the leeches on his skin and you saw they were healthy, and so that means he's doing great. It's like, no, you're looking at the parasites.
The leech market is doing fantastically. Leeches are going through the roof. But that's the other thing when people always say, oh, the stock market's when the media says this bullshit. I'm always like, especially now, I'm like, weird. So when the stock market just had a great week. You know who else had record numbers? Food banks.
Yeah.
They've had record numbers.
Yeah.
The past Thanksgiving week, all the food banks are like, we haven't seen anything like this ever.
I can't remember. Maybe you can help me out. Are food banks on the Dow Jones? I don't know.
I want to say no. I don't think that they are. But yeah, someone's like, boy, maybe we should put food bank stock on the market. Like, it's unreal, man. It's unreal. So anyway, that's my Federal Reserve government secret.
Thank you guys for joining us. I'm gonna dip out and let Graham answer some questions, but yeah, everybody can check out my stuff at leecamp.com. And I was mentioning when we had the sound issues before that I've just been told by PM Press that my book is 50% off right now with the coupon code GIFT, GIFT. Until January 1st. So that's, you got to go to their website though. Don't get it on Amazon. You got to go to pmpress.org and you can get 50% off. The book's called Bullet Points and Punchlines. But yeah, other than that, I have a show called Redacted Tonight. I have another podcast called Common Censored, and it's all at leecamp.com.
Support small businesses, you guys. So go to pmpress.org. They're a cool little publishing house. They actually are out of San Francisco. They were at Ron and I's show, our last live show we did before the shutdown. And again, support them over Amazon. And Bullet Points and Punchlines is a fantastic book. Makes a great gift.
Makes a great gift.
A great gift for family and friends. And also,
did you have to train for the radio voice, or is that just natural?
Lee, this was my standard speaking voice that I talk to the good people of America and across the world and all the shit to see. I think my training was, I grew up and, as a kid in the 70s, when you stayed home from school, you'd watch game shows. So that was my training, was faking that I was sick so I could stay home and watch Jim Perry jog out for Card Sharks or whatever. Is it higher than a 9? Yes. And then you learn is it higher than a 9? Ooh. That's a skill. So it's a skill. So I'm going to start doing a game show host training school. People. Anyway, folks, also you can watch my show, Political Vigilante, on YouTube. And Lee and I both are on rockfin.com. So check out that cryptocurrency platform. And of course, you can get all my stuff at grahamelwood.com. That's it. Government Secrets, episode 18. Put it in the books.
Later, man. Have a good day.
All right, buddy. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please hit the like button, the subscribe button. Go to patreon.com/GrahamElwood and rockfin.com/GrahamElwood, where you can support the show. Also, I have a Bitcoin wallet, a Bitcoin Cash wallet, and an Ethereum wallet in the show notes. We're taking cryptocurrency. I have a Coinbase affiliation link. We're going to be getting on some other exchanges. So that's how you support the show. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. YouTube is unsubscribing us at an alarming rate. I have a PayPal button at GrahamElwood.com. I even have a Venmo at Graham-Elwood. There's a lot of ways to support our show. We are getting crushed by YouTube. We've dipped under 73,000 subscribers because of YouTube. Thanks for supporting what we do.